CTV News at 6 with Joe Perkins.
Good evening. Glad you could be here with us tonight. If you're not ready for the big one, consider yourself warned again. Early this morning, a powerful earthquake struck off the west coast of Alaska, sparking a brief tsunami warning stretching all the way to the northern tip of Vancouver Island. The 7.5 magnitude earthquake struck just after 1 a.m., putting the entire BC coast on advisory. And similar to October, during that last record-setting earthquake, it's come and gone, leaving many Vancouver Islanders feeling lucky. It's becoming a familiar scene for coastal communities. Early this morning, Sitka High School in Alaska opens its doors after an unexpected earthquake.
Well, last night at 2 minutes to midnight Alaska Standard Time, there was a magnitude 7.5 earthquake along the west coast of the Alaskan Panhandle, so southeastern Alaska.
The powerful quake shook Alaska, Prince Rupert, and parts of the Queen Charlotte Islands.
It rocked my house personally.
A tsunami warning quickly followed for nearly 1,000 kilometers of coastline stretching from Alaska to the north end of Vancouver Island. An advisory warning of potential undercurrents was also issued for the BC coast all the way to Victoria, where most people were still fast asleep.
I had no idea.
North of the island, beds shook.
It rattled my house completely, and my cats went on the fritz, and that's how I knew something was up, because my cat.
Like many, she escaped to the nearby school as provincial emergency teams began assessing the region's latest large quake.
In looking and assessing things in the middle of the night is a little bit of a different game than it is in broad daylight.
But with waves reaching only a few centimeters above sea level, the warnings and advisories were quickly lifted.
Earthquake.
It's been just over 2 months since October's record-breaking 7.7 magnitude earthquake off Haida Gwaii, a quake that shook the province in more ways than one. The province vowed to update its alert systems, and by all accounts, this morning the word got out.
The October event and this event have been great eye-openers for British Columbians, all of us collectively.
Seismologists say October's quake wasn't the big one. This morning's wasn't either. Instead, they're calling both wake-up calls that might not be loud enough.
Are you prepared for an earthquake if it were to hit Victoria?
Not at all.
She's not the only one not prepared. Others argue they're not worried, puzzling seismologists who say the big one isn't a matter of if, but rather when.
You're living in a seismically active area. This kind of earthquake could certainly happen closer to home.
If it does, consider yourself warned. Turning now to the U.S.-Canada border, where protests under the Idle No More banner continued for another day. They said they would turn up at the Coho Ferry Terminal in Victoria, and they did. A few hundred protesters armed with drums and signs took over the intersection of Belleville and Oswego this afternoon. Passengers on the ferry were told to anticipate delays, but for the most part, Coho traffic was largely unaffected. The demonstration is part of a national effort to halt traffic at borders that comes one day after Prime Minister Harper agreed to meet with First Nations leaders next Friday.
We've seen what his meetings look like. We saw last January what his meetings look like, and they're pretty much photo ops for him, and he had a kind of a plane waiting for him, and nothing. There was no follow-up. And
the protests are in support of First Nations Chief Teresa Spence, who has been on a hunger strike since the 11th of December to highlight Aboriginal issues. Today's demonstration is the fourth in Greater Victoria. In addition to Victoria, hundreds of Aboriginal women and their supporters gathered at the Peace Arch border crossing this afternoon. Indigenous people from BC and the United States, including Coast Salish, Cree, Inuit, and Mohawk, banged drums and sang songs. There were speeches as well as prayers, with many calling on Prime Minister Harper to protect their future. Traffic crossing at the border was not interrupted. Back on the island, it wasn't just border crossings. More than 130 people armed with Idle No More signs and, again, drums took over the intersection at 17th and Cliff this afternoon. The protest was civil, with no attempts to block traffic.
It's time for us to take back our own power and make our own rules about how we should live, because we've been taught all of our lives the respect that we need to have for one another and for the land and the sea and the air, and we think we have a pretty good idea how to do that without the help of the government.
In addition to the protests here in BC, there were also bridge, railway, and highway blockades scattered across other parts of the country today. The public hearing into the Enbridge Northern Gateway Pipeline project has wrapped up its second day of speakers. It was a slow morning at the hearings with several registered speakers not showing up. The ones that did pointed to the overnight earthquake, saying frequent earthquakes in the region are another reason why a pipeline through the province is a bad idea.
Another earthquake this morning, an oil spill recently in Alaska, dismal safety record on Enbridge pipelines elsewhere. A collection of small spills or a catastrophic spill on the coast would devastate the ability of Canadians to grow their economies.
The hearing began at 9 this morning. For the first time since the hearings began, the public is banned from entering the hearings. A viewing room has been set up at the Ramada on the Gorge for anyone wishing to watch. Along with economic, cultural, and environmental concerns, earthquake fears were prominent today from pipeline opponents.
And just last night, of course, a 7.5 earthquake occurred in the Kitimat area, reminding us of the danger of pipelines rupturing and tankers smashed by tsunamis.
The hearings will break tomorrow and resume on Monday, running in Victoria until the end of the week. Only registered speakers will be able to speak. After Victoria, the hearings move to Vancouver for a week and then on to Kelowna for a one-day hearing there. Firefighters from up and down Vancouver Island spent the day in Comox battling multiple fires. This morning it was a car fire. This afternoon the flames were pouring from a building. But unlike most fires we report, these were controlled blazes in a unique island setting. CTV's Gord Kurbis has the story.
Flames consume this vehicle parked in a back lot in Comox. Moments later, firefighters get the order to move in and knock the blaze down.
Some of these are brand new people. There's 15 firefighters here. To be certified as a firefighter, you're required to take a live fire program twice. So this is, in some cases, this is our first go at it.
Those volunteers are from 6 different fire departments up and down Vancouver Island, plus another on the Sunshine Coast. Their training will last for 2 days and will see them up against a variety of live fire exercises. Comox has one of only 2 concrete fire facilities on Vancouver Island, and it's the only department that's tied in with the Justice Institute for this type of training.
It's kind of a unique situation here. Many years ago, probably 15 years ago, we realized here in Comox that every year we're training about 6 or 8 new firefighters. So we decided to build our own training center. Save us on costs and efficiencies and sending people to the Lower Mainland and other places.
The department's unique building lets trainees experience intense situations. In this exercise, they're learning how to properly use water to vent out excess smoke.
They get into a small area, they close it all off so that the smoke cannot escape, and then they build a fire. They watch the thermal air actually comes down lower, big blanket of smoke, and as it gets lower, the heat layer, it becomes very extreme. So learning how to ventilate with the hose line in so that the smoke will actually travel with the hose line and be forced out.
For many volunteers, it's the first experience they have getting this close to the flames.
Inside, while it is hot, it is very, very calming. It can be, as long as you can see very well, it can be a really great situation for learning how to rescue people.
It's valuable experience they appreciate getting.
Oh, awesome. All the guys are just awesome. Instructors, everybody, I love it. It really feels like part of a community.
While volunteers from the island are learning to put out blazes, members from the Comox Fire Department are shredding discarded Christmas trees. Trees are taken in along with donations, and just like the training sessions, are now an ongoing part of the department's activities. Gord Kurbis, CTV News, Comox.